Hey guys, Steve from theturtlefollower.com here, and we're going to take a look at the anatomy of a stock trade video for this week. We're going to look at a trade that I made in my personal account in Schlumberger, ticker symbol SLB. And when I had first looked at this trade, this was a trade that, for whatever reason in my head, I thought wasn't going to work out, but I was still going to take the trade because it was the setup I was looking for. So we're just going to go through what I saw real quick and kind of the quick reason I thought that maybe it wasn't going to necessarily work in my favor. But Schlumberger at one point during 2012, 2013 was really just consolidating in here. Okay, it was moving sideways between $80 and $60, let's say. And then what happened is Schlumberger started to, this is the weekly chart on top, started to put in a little bit of what I consider a higher base. So in that bigger consolidation, it started to consolidate again, but in a much narrower range. And then eventually it did break out, and it led to some higher prices. That wasn't where I got in. Wish I did. Wasn't. But then what happened again is Schlumberger started to, again, consolidate within a range, okay, from November or October of 2013 all the way through until March of 2014. And you can see that right here on the daily chart as well. So on the weekly chart, I had already established that I wanted to be long the stock based on how the stock was performing on the weekly chart. I was considering it to be in an uptrend, but now I needed to find an actual spot where I wanted to get long. I had to find a nice spot, and we look at some consolidation then on the daily chart to get a narrower range where we can set a stop that's close enough, but still gives the stock some wiggle room and allows for a large enough position. So you'll see here on the daily chart, Schlumberger again still consolidating. This is this area in here, and then finally, so right in here is where I started to say, well, this might be the spot because we were trading above the 50-day moving average. And sure enough, we had that breakout. Okay, so the first time I didn't think it was going to work out. It didn't close. I said, oh, we're going to go ahead and test the bottom of this consolidation down here at 89. The next day, it finally did close above this consolidation. But then what happened was I was looking at this, and I was concerned that we were trading right into these highs here. So I was concerned that what was going to happen is, even though we got this strong move off the bottom, that we were going to go ahead. It was going to be a fake breakout, and it was going to reverse just because of where we were, and stock hadn't really traded that high. But this is the opposite side of that argument, was looking back, knowing what I know now, we technically did break out above that 95 level, and there was no resistance whatsoever above. It was trading at almost all-time highs. It was trading at least 52-week highs. And this is when I talk about the blue sky territory, where everybody that's ever bought the stock is a winner. And that's a great problem to have, because now there's really nobody looking to sell the stock. And that was something I didn't think about back then. So again, if I kind of let my head get in the way, I would have maybe not taken the trade and, of course, missed out on what happened afterwards. So you could see as well on the weekly chart that consolidation, and eventually this is the bar, the breakout bar that we got on the weekly chart from that breakout. So it was well above the recent resistance, and it was definitely a breakout on the weekly as well. So we kind of timed it both ways, where I had a breakout on the daily and a breakout on the weekly, and it was that much more powerful of a move. So stock continued to work. All right, and at this point my stop initially was set right in here at the breakout 89. I entered here on the 26th at the open, which was 95.84. So stock worked. Okay, and now we can start maybe drawing some trend lines that we didn't have on before, because it was a little difficult to draw those trend lines when you're really just moving sideways for, essentially 6 months. So at this point, my stop is still down here at 89. And it wasn't until we got this breakout right in here, because what I identified again was another consolidation. Okay, came back, and then eventually, because the reason I couldn't set my stop here was because of where the 50-day moving average was. It could have technically broken my stop, but still came down and tested the 50-day moving average, which wasn't something I was willing to do. So I waited all the way until this stock consolidated, and eventually came in and bounced off almost the 50-day moving average and closed above that range. So to me, that identifies a new stop level. So my stop, the first stop I had, jumped from 89 to 98. So you can see, again, why it's important to allow for these stocks to just let them work. Okay? There's no reason. I could have technically, obviously hindsight being 2020, yes, I could have brought my stop to here, 96.86. But the problem was, like I said, if it came back down and broke right in here, that level, it would have came down and still tested the 50-day. When the stock was allowed to consolidate and move sideways, it moved right into the 50-day and bounced higher. That's where the stop was set, 98.28. So again, the stock then moved higher, okay? And here was my next stop level. And that was only because of this huge volume. All right, this bar right here on June 25th. So my stop, when this bar moved almost, I think it was like 6 or 7% in a day, I then moved my stop from 98.28 to 106. All right, so there was really just 3 stops in this whole trade in a matter of, I think I was in the trade for 6 months or 5 months, and I moved my stop twice. So that's what essentially or eventually ended up stopping me out, was that 106 level. It broke out, it came back, consolidated, and I said, okay, well, I know my stop is in the right spot because now we're getting a little consolidation right around that 106 level. And eventually this bar right here, this on 8/14, was my trigger. It finally closed below 106. That was my trigger to exit the trade. Now looking back, obviously, would I have liked to get out, up in this area? Of course. But there was no place to move a stop at that point. The 50-day moving average was still well down here. And the trend line that I was working off of was either here or here. All right, so the trend line broke, but the 50-day moving average was still there. So again, no real good place to set a stop. I still kept it at 106.06, and then therefore that's where I ended up getting stopped out on the 15th. So looking at the trade as a whole, I followed my plan. I entered here on the 26th, and I exited on the 15th of, should be more specific, the 26th of March, which is actually my youngest son's birthday. And I exited on 8/15 right here after this down bar on the 14th. So it took about, almost 6 months or 5 months. And the stock returned about 10%. The trade returned about 10%. Now, again, I would have loved to somehow be able to set a stop, somewhere higher or, even at the 50-day, but I had no reference to go off of. Therefore, the stop remained 106. I gave back about, I think it was 7 or 8% in this move until when I eventually got closed out. But on the flip side of it, I definitely walked away with 10% of a gain, and that's plenty good for me. So, it's a gain. It's not a loss. And, I followed the plan as I had laid it out. But again, this is just I guess a little lesson on, not trusting your instincts. Just let the price action talk, because if I had trusted my instincts, I may have passed the trade up in the beginning, just because I thought, for whatever reason, that the stock wasn't going to work. But the fact is, it ended up working, and it was based off price action, and everything from entry to exit and trailing stops was based off price action and not any predictions, and it ended up working out in the end. So with that said, that's it for the Anatomy of a Trade video for this week. Please join me tonight for the strategy session and over the weekend for the weekend update. Please also follow me, StockTwits, Twitter, Google+, and YouTube, and subscribe to the nightly recap that I have on the website. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you later.